I'd like to think I had a pretty cushy life, but at the same time, my work-life balance was tough. My partner, who I was with as well, had pointed out, hey, you have a lot of anxiety on Sunday nights. Throughout the summer of last year, I think was when I really, decided that I want to pull the trigger. I'm going to sell my house, sell everything I have, say bye to everyone I know, and take off somewhere. And Colombia was top of mind.
Julz is an entrepreneur from Toronto who just moved to Medellin, and in this video I'm going to be interviewing him on his process of deciding on Colombia as his new home, how the transition was, any challenges he had along the way, and also I'm going to be asking him about his life now in Medellin. All right, Julz, thanks for being on today, brother. Can you first tell us a little bit about yourself?
For sure. So I started life in Sri Lanka. I lived there for a couple of years. Left when I was a baby to Saudi Arabia. Then went to New Zealand for a while and to Canada. So quite a bunch of journeys there. And I lived in Canada for about 35 years before deciding to come out here in May this year. I'd like to think I had a pretty cushy life, but at the same time, my work-life balance was tough. High stress sort of culture and environment there in Toronto, especially, which is kind of similar to, I guess, in New York in a way. Also high price, high cost of living and so forth. So, I think I did pretty good for myself, but I wanted to change. I wanted more balance in my life and more freedom. So that, this afforded me that.
When did you decide it was too much or it got too stressful for you and you started thinking about a way out?
My partner, who I was with as well, had pointed out, hey, you have a lot of anxiety on Sunday nights. And, that really brought it up to me. And, it made me think about my solo entrepreneur days when I was just an entrepreneur. And I was still working for a company at that time. And then they had some cutbacks and they cut down the Canadian region back in February of last year. And then throughout the summer of last year, I think was when I really, decided that I want to pull the trigger. I'm going to sell my house, sell everything I have, say bye to everyone I know, and take off somewhere. And Colombia was top of mind.
That's hilarious, man, because we've never spoken about this, but in a lot of my videos, I always used to say one of my main reasons for wanting to leave was Sunday afternoon anxiety. As soon as Sunday afternoon came, I was like, oh my God, back to Monday. I only got 48 hours to enjoy myself, and that went as quick as like 2 hours, and now back to the grind of the rat race again. So it's funny that you say that because I feel like probably a lot of people feel that same way.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing of living for the weekend instead of living each day was something that, some people have that mindset, even though they're still stressed with their work and they don't want to pull that trigger. But yeah, sometimes it gets to you and you realize how short life is.
So how did you decide on Colombia?
Well, I had two ex-partners who were Colombian, and you think that would actually discourage me, but it didn't. But I knew a lot about the culture. I think, for over like 25 years of dating a couple of Colombian girlfriends and ex-wife actually as well. So I think that, got me introduced to the culture a bit. And funny enough, I've traveled 43 countries, and many of them multiple times over, but I've only been to Colombia once, and it was last year. It was actually last February. Bogota, the first time in my life. I was only here for about 3 or 4 days. I just fell in love with the people there. I mean, mind you, there's a lot of differences, as you definitely very well know, between Medellin and Bogota. I think Medellin's more warmer, not just the temperature, but the people. When I landed here, to be honest with you, I've never been to Medellin. I sold my house. I landed here before I even got paid for my lawyer. And I just discovered Medellin, mainly through your course.
One thing you said was the culture. So you dated Colombians for basically 25 years of your life, which is a long time. And you said you really like their culture. Could you tell me a little bit about which aspects of the Colombian culture that you enjoyed so much?
The warmth and the family values really, sat with me well. I never got into the whole watching the narco kind of culture, but I did listen to a lot of music because of my ex's parents and so forth, like Octavio Mesa, who was a ranchero and so forth as well. And because one was from Cartagena, the other one was from Santa Rosa de Cabal, they were kind of diverse. None of them were from Medellin, but yeah, it was a rich family culture to them.
Cool, man. So you visited once Bogota, and then you decided the combination of what you had seen here plus the cultural values that you just identified, you knew this was the place for you and you wanted to come here. When did those pipe dreams of kind of like, oh, this is a pretty cool spot, to like, all right, boom, I'm going to take this course, I'm going to move there, this is going to be my next life? How did that all come to fruition?
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying Julz' story, and we'll head back there in just a second. But I just wanted to take a couple of seconds to let you know about the importance of travel medical insurance. In fact, most of the long-term visas that allow you to stay in Colombia for more than a year have mandatory health insurance requirements. And the best health insurance that I've found that meets all these requirements is Safety Wing Travel Medical Insurance. There's the essential plan and the complete plan, which cover you depending on what your needs may be. So if you want a quick quote, just click the link in the description that I've left and you can get that right now. And with that said, let's get back to Julz' story.
Like last summer, so 2023 summer, it kind of really came to me. I was like, I'm gonna list my house in October. So did some quick renovations, and I didn't know then exactly, thinking back to my mindset where I'd end up. But the common places that come to mind is like Thailand. I've been to Thailand like 5 times. I've been to Bali just in 2019, and they weren't kind of for me. Great food, great people as well. A lot of hustle and bustle, but I also wanted to be somewhere closer to North America as well. So South America was automatically number one on my list. I really don't know my mindset into why Colombia, but I started really doing a lot of research. Like I'm talking about like 80, to 100 hours of research in a month, and that's how I came across yourself and Andrew. And I went down that kind of rabbit hole in a way. But then the other ones were like Mexico, and I think Guatemala was up there in Peru. But I think a lot of them from my research online didn't really hold a candle to Colombia from what I've known, and something just brought me to it.
A lot of people say that as well. They're like, they did a lot of research, but Colombia was just calling them.
And a lot of my friends thought I'm crazy. They're like, you've never been to Medellin, and you're selling your house the same day that you're closing your house. You're landing in a place that you've never been. I said, yeah, and it's going to be home.
Any challenges when it came to moving here? Like a lot of people might be watching this and be like, oh my God, it feels like a lot of work. Which probably it is, but could you just tell us the biggest challenges you faced when uprooting your whole life, let's say, to move to Medellin?
I had a house to get rid of. It was a pretty big house, and a little harder to list, especially the struggling market in North America at the time. Like I sold in May, so that was like a big concern of mine was the house itself. But then assets like cars. My house was full of furniture and things like that I spent a lot of time investing in. So like letting go of that was the first thing. But it was kind of pretty easy when I think about it, and I really don't miss any of it. That was one of the things. Like just getting yourself organized, understanding what the new requirements are for a whole different country, the whole tax situations. I'm a co-founder of a business, and I have multiple businesses actually in Canada. So getting the whole logistics behind the taxes and working out the businesses and getting rid of all the things that you have, all your possessions and what you're keeping or not, was sort of the main things for me, as well as another unique thing for me is the dog. So I have a dog, and getting him over here was a bit troubling. And actually, I didn't get him in the first try. So I actually had to go back in July, a month and a half ago, and pick him up, bring him back here with the proper paperwork.
And it's funny, a lot of people probably have the same problem as you. Like they've spent many years. You're what, like 42, 43?
45. Thank you, though.
So 45, you've been working very hard for like 25 years, and you have built a lot of wealth and accumulated a lot of possessions more than anything. How did it feel to firstly think about letting go of all those possessions? And then secondly, how did it feel when you finally did let go of all those possessions?
You know what? I really don't miss it. I have a little small cologne selection beside me here, for example, and I had 200 bottles of colognes. I had 17 cars. I had 17 cars in 7 years. All like only 2 at a time or 1 at a time. But I guess I was a materialistic person, but I enjoyed some of the finer things in life. A lot of my friends again thought I was crazy selling a collection of shoes to colognes to all these things, but I've never felt so good releasing it all, and it brought me a whole different perspective in life. And the simpleness of my life now is so less complex, so less stressful. It's really a breath of fresh air.
And now that you're in Colombia, one of the things that I really like about it here is not that much of a flex culture. I don't know about Canada, but the US has a horrible flex culture. Everyone's always trying to get more than their neighbor just so they can show off on social media and things like that. Colombia, it seems like they don't really care about that so much. How are you going to live your life now that you're in this culture? Since you like the materialistic things, let's call it, you had a lot of kind of possessions. Are you going to continue that way, or are you going to be more minimalistic now that you're here?
Definitely not. I came here with 2 large suitcases and a dog. Pretty much got rid of everything and never looked back. And I really don't miss it. Life is simple here, and it's great. Like it's really refreshing.
It's really, I guess, therapeutic when you sell, throw away, or give away all your stuff that you don't really need, and then you realize how little you actually really need. When I first left Australia, I traveled for 2 years, just traveling around before I found Medellin and lived here. And that whole time, I didn't even have a suitcase. I just had kind of a carry-on and a backpack, and I had all my clothes there, and that was enough, It's like, you don't need all these possessions and all this shit.
For sure, man. Like even the 2 suitcases I have right now, I'm like, it's not like I'm overfilling the closet. I'm like, I brought too much shit here still.
Hey, let's pivot to pros and cons of living here.
The people, like again, going back to that point of just the warm culture, I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, there's tons of videos on Instagram or on YouTube about it. People who've come out here and really experienced the people and the culture. And in Medellin specifically, I can tell you that some of the warmest people I've met in the 43 countries I've been to are definitely right here in Medellin. Whenever I need help, I still get lost all the time. So I've only been here about 4 months now. Whenever I need help, like people, like they'll get someone else to help them if they didn't know, and they'll stand there until you're good. That's just like one example of, I think, many. me. I lost my bank card yesterday, but everyone stopped and they stopped the whole restaurant and they're all helping me look, and it wasn't even there. And I told them, look, it's not here that I lost this for sure. But whenever you need them, they seem to be there.
Yeah, that's another big thing that people really love about living here, just the helpfulness and kindness of the Colombians. Let's circle back to food. What type of dishes do you like to eat?
I hear a lot of complaints about, I think that's the first thing that people say when they come here, but there's also a lot of ethnic food here as well. I mean, I lived in Saudi Arabia for a while, so sometimes I want a shawarma. I mean, I think there's like 10 shawarma shops around here. There's 2 or 3 Indian restaurants. There's the Korean food, there's lots of Japanese food. So even if you're not really into the local food, there's lots of options here, and I think it's only getting better.
And weather is your final pro. Is that what you're going to use? You got 3 choices for pros. Yeah. You've used people, you've used food. Is weather going to be your third option?
It is. Definitely. Okay. I mean, looking right at the view right now with my 5 doors open, the panoramic view. I mean, yeah, sometimes the pollution gets in the way. Sorry to throw a little con in there, but yeah, no, the weather is great. Can be a bit rainy sometimes, but it's beautiful overall. I think the average is 17 to 27 degrees Celsius every day.
We talked about pros. Let's talk about cons now. Tell me number 1 con of living in Medellin.
I mean, I don't know, like a weird one could be like just walking around the sidewalk. If you're on your phone, the sidewalk in Australia or in Toronto, you're probably pretty fine. But here, I mean, you could break your shin. There could be a couple of potholes. A lot of fast driving. I think, a lot of people like you and I who've traveled the world can get used to that pretty fast. But, like my mom's coming to visit in a month or so, and, definitely wouldn't leave her out alone, walking around with, the speed of the traffic. And the other thing is the language. I knew that was a big thing. I had started with a profesora before I came here, but didn't realize how far back I was and how I can't hold a conversation with the Spanish that I know so far. So I'd say definitely get a good grip on that.
Any advice for other people looking to do what you've done? Escape the rat race, move to Colombia and build a new life here. What advice would you give them, Julz?
Just pull the trigger. I think once I did that, everyone's like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. I said, well, what's stopping you? A lot of my savings and stuff like that are in investments. So I'm like, it's not like I'm just going there with, a big checkbook, for example. So I said, nothing's really stopping anyone that I know who could do that. Unfortunately for me, I mean, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, so it was a little easier that aspect. But other than that, I was very grounded there. Most of my life was in Canada and in North America. I think pulling the trigger and realizing how precious life is and travel is. Join a great course as well. Like you guys, I mean, honestly, we're huge because the resources were there, like, an Excel document with all the people you would ever need, the community that I was a part of before I even stepped foot in here with the WhatsApp group. I don't know. I've never felt so good in my life.